Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Man Cave, and I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to start off with the video first thing, and we'll go on from there. So here it is. Well, it wasn't a quick fix, but I think we finally fixed the Ranger. And I'm going to do a cold test. It's only 60 degrees out here this morning. We're going to do a start. I guarantee you, it's completely cold. So let's see if it will start and idle. Here we go. Yes, it will. It's a little rough, but I guarantee you for the last 5 years, it wouldn't do that. Guarantee you. It would just die instantly. So you can see it's smoothing out now. Pretty cool. I'll just leave the camera running. Well, here are the tractors, and I'll show you what I worked on those yesterday. Let me get the light on. That helps a little bit. Well, I took all the guards off this, cleaned all the junk out of there yesterday, which was quite a mess. I took all 3 blades off, sharpened all 3 blades. One of them was really hard to get off. I don't know, it had seized on the bolt, but I got it. I greased it all up, serviced it, and then I went back and cut about 3 to 4 acres of grass back in the back where I can metal detect it later on. That's a finish mower. It does a much better job. It's almost like your regular lawnmower. It does a much better job than a brush hog like this. On the brush hog, I also fixed parts on it. This had broken here and broken there, and I'll be honest, it's just a quick, temporary fix. I didn't feel like spending a lot of time on it, but at least it's fixed. I also tightened up that bolt across there. It had gotten so loose. So anyway, that will keep Sue happy for a little while, that she can actually use it. Let's just walk outside and see if there's anything going on out here in the pond area. This little house here is a well house. The well for the retreat and for the old house, all the water comes from here. This water also goes that way and services like up to the chicken house, I think it is. Well, it actually does service the barn also. And then the well that we have behind our big house services down to the machine shed. So there's a lot of underground water pipes running around here. Here's some pretty flowers that I didn't really know were in bloom. And some more little flowers. And then a bush in bloom. So we got things starting to bloom out here. Pond looks absolutely still. See no activity with the fish or anything else. I can see that the water wheel is spinning through the hole there. And I guess that's going to be it for this morning. So we'll get back in the Ranger, get up there and edit this little short video, and we'll see you on the vlog. There is nothing, absolutely not one single thing that has tickled me more than fixing that Ranger. That has been the biggest pain in my you-know-where for the last 4 or 5 years. It just wouldn't run right. I kept thinking it was all idle adjustment because there's not much to work on those things. The carburetors are a lot different than these fuel injection things. Now, I had already replaced the injectors, and I think I replaced that throttle body sensor. I had replaced that, and I didn't know what else to do. And the only thing that seemed to make sense was the actual idle adjustment, the speed of the idle. And it would die. And so I would speed it up a little bit and it would run, and it would be fine for a day or two, and then it would die again. And then I told you that was so sensitive, you could just turn it the least little bit and it would change the idle completely nuts. It's just nuts how it would change it. So finally, I guess it was 2 days ago, I saw a short video from a guy that says, I work on, all these different Polaris Rangers, and he says 80% of them, all you have to do to fix the idle is clean the carbon out of this tube here and clean the carbon off that sensor back there, and it'll work. And I thought, really, that simple? So yesterday morning, Trinian, my the older of the two boys, he decided he wanted to help me do this, and I was really tickled to have him down there being interested in it, and he did 80 or 90% of the nut turning and screw turning, and I just mostly supervised, told him what to do, and he did most of the work. There was a couple things that were so tight he couldn't get them loose or whatever, so I'd break them loose and then let him finish it, but anyway, he did most of the work. And then sure enough, we took that throttle body off, and it was completely black. I mean, it was completely black. Now, I'll be honest, I don't think that makes that much difference. I don't think the throttle body itself would make all that much difference, because it's just a tube. There's nothing going on there. It's just a tube. And so, I mean, I could tell it was really black, and I thought, I'll clean it, but I don't think that's going to do much, So anyway, we cleaned that, and then, I couldn't see the sensor yet. The sensor was back under there, so the sensor was a lot more complicated to get to. You have to take off the air cleaner and open up the back there, and I'm talking about the bed. You have to raise the bed up and get in there, and so we got all that apart, and then we got to the sensor. Well, sure enough, the sensor, now it's an electronic deal that sticks down inside that other tube, and it was completely blacked over and caked full. So I thought, well, there you go. There's your problem right there. Now, that made more sense, because the sensor does something, it wouldn't be there, and so we cleaned that all off with brake cleaner and stuff, and blew it out, and, brushed it and all kinds of things. We used a soft bristle brush on it and cleaned it so we wouldn't damage it, And anyway, we got that looking pretty much brand new. I put that throttle body in the sonic cleaner and cleaned that really good. And anyway, blew it all out, got everything good and dry, put it back together, and it didn't work. So I was a little disappointed at first. And then we messed with that throttle position sensor, and then I could tell that's where my problem was. So it was just trial and error till I got that right. And finally, after the third attempt, we got that right, and then it ran. It worked perfectly from then on. It was like awesome. So that was so good. I'm just absolutely tickled that it works. Now, like I said, there's not one single thing I've worked on around here, mechanically speaking, that's been half as enjoyable as fixing that. Trust me, that's made my day. It's made my year, really. Because you could see why the Ranger's so vital here. In that video, you saw going around the house and going down the driveway all the way to that shed. Well, I mean, you can walk all that, and I do it all the time. I do walk it, but if you're in the middle of a project and you got to walk to go get a screwdriver, and then you go walk back to the place, and then you go, oh, now I need a crescent wrench, and you walk up and get a crescent wrench, come back. That Ranger, you wouldn't get nothing done without it. So that's why that Ranger is so vital. And it's my legs, really. And I do a lot of walking anyway, don't get me wrong. I don't drive that thing everywhere, but it's when you're in the middle of a project, it's super, super, super helpful. And I am so tickled it's working. While in the... I thought I'd just point a couple of things out that occurred to me while that video was playing. You could... as we went around the house there, you could tell I was going between that rock wall. And I know that most of you know this already, but that didn't exist before. You couldn't drive around that into the house. That hill came all the way to the house before. So I built that whole retaining wall, and I dug all that dirt out. Digging all that dirt out was a big job. And I dug all that dirt out and made a road where you could drive all the way around the house. I didn't necessarily do it so you could drive around the house, though that was a big part of it. I mostly did it to get the dirt away from the house because the water would run down the hill and then run right up against the house. I mean, it was just a mess. And so anyway, that was just another project that happened here on the farm, and I thought I'd just tell you about that. Then after that, you saw the tractor, the finish mower. Well, I remembered from the vlog yesterday, people sounded like they were interested in the blade sharpening. So it turned out I was going to do that anyway yesterday because I wanted to sharpen the blades on that finish mower, service that finish mower up, and then take it back there and cut a bunch of stuff. And I did. I cut 3 or 4 acres where I can, around that back pond where I could do some more metal detecting and stuff. And anyway, while I was doing that, I thought, well, it's a perfect time to make another blade sharpening video. So as we speak, I'm actually editing that video. I was editing that while I was waiting for this to come up to go live. So, and it's a short video. It won't take me very long to edit that. I'll have that out hopefully before lunch today. I'll have that video out again. And I think it'll be a good one. And I cover a number of points in that video that are critical for sharpening a blade like that. Trinian and Leighton are leaving today to go to my daughter Lisa's house, who lives up in Eureka by Six Flags. And Rochelle is going to continue on from there back to her home in Ohio, but the boys are going to stay at Lisa's today. And Lisa's taking them downtown to the City Museum, which is a pretty cool place. I've been there a couple of times. If you've never been there, if you're coming through St. Louis, the City Museum is a place you might want to stop. It's lots of artsy type things, and there's a lot of interactive type sculptures and different things that are there. Very interesting. You will like it if you're in St. Louis. The City Museum is a place you should check it out. So that boys are going to go there today, and then they're coming back here Saturday, and they're going to stay a few more days. I think they're going to stay a week. Let's see. And as I said, Trinian really was a big help on that fix yesterday. He did all that work. But here's where, I was joking with you guys and with Trinian and about how I schooled him on fishing, that I was going to send him to fishing school. Well, anyway, he schooled me yesterday on something. He taught me as much yesterday as I taught him. I mean, the time span was much longer that I was teaching him on working on that equipment and stuff, but in 3 seconds he taught me a better lesson that's going to be very helpful for me. If you know anything about Google, well, you can search on images and things. Well, I know how to do that, but I wasn't efficient at doing that. And so we were looking at that sensor, and I said, man, maybe I ought to just buy a new sensor, And he says, well, just Google it, Grandpa, on the image. And And I'm thinking, well, it takes a couple minutes here, take a picture, and then you get it into Google and look for it. And he goes, no, it's real fast. So I said, well, show me. And so I hit him the phone, and I am not exaggerating. You're going to think he's making this up. I'm not lying. 3 seconds. He didn't have the phone in his hand 3 seconds. He goes, here it is right here. It's on eBay. And I went, huh? I'm thinking, there's no way he could have done that. I barely got my hands back from this. I'm handing him the phone, and I barely got my hands back, and he goes, here it is right here on eBay. I'm going, there's no way you could do it that fast. There's no way. And he did. I already had I already had Google up, and all he did was, and the sensor was laying right there on the desk in front of us, and all he did was he clicked on the camera on the Google thing, and it just instantly went, and with our fast internet, it just pulled it up instantly. I knew how to do that, but I thought you had to take a picture first and then put it in there. You don't have to do that, obviously. Most of you already know that. I mean, I'm not teaching you anything, but I'm kind of stupid on some things sometimes. Some of the most obvious things, I'll miss those things. And anyway, so it was just crazy. So he taught me something there that's really valuable, actually. And then later on, when we were putting it back together, I said, well, I can't remember. Does this go on the top or the bottom? He goes, well, let's just Google it. So he did the same thing. He took a picture of that spot, on the thing, and bingo, it popped right up, and we knew right where that part went, He's no dummy. That boy's, he really did that. He schooled me. I can tell you that for sure. So I told him, I said, well, I told you, I was calling those guys smartphone dumb the other day. I said, well, now I've got to call you smartphone smart. You're pretty smart on that. So I was really tickled. That actually will help me. That's really, really helpful to learn how to use the phone more efficiently. Anyway, let's see. I think that's it on that. Now, here's a little bit more on the actual, or did I show you that already? No, so for the record, I took this throttle body, I guess you'd call it, off, completely cleaned that out, put it in the sonic cleaner, cleaned it that way. It was full of carbon deposits. This throttle position sensor here, I think is what it's called, is also critical to the idle and all that, and even to the accelerator. And it took a little bit of adjustment to get that right after we cleaned everything. There is also a sensor, which you won't be able to see, I don't think, but there's a sensor that goes into, I think, this rubber piece way back there. Anyway, you can't see that, but that sensor was probably the biggest factor. It was completely carboned up, and once we cleaned that and put everything back together, it now functions like it should function. I am so tickled, and at least now if it gives me more trouble, I'll know what to do. Well, anyway, I just thought I'd show you that here. I don't know if that's probably overkill, but the point is that it was a very simple thing to fix it after all this time of aggravation. So I'm tickled to get that fixed. Let's see. I think that's everything I had for today. So let's go to the comments and see what we've got there. Boy, there is a lot of comments. Golly. And I think most of it's just conversations this morning. John Pepper was number one, Eddie Turner, David Thorpe, and Dottie Hildebrandt, Rod Wintler. Let's see. Eddie says, oh no, he's talking to Dottie. I'm just going to look for questions that might be pertaining to me. Here's Tom Armstrong. Good morning. Thinking you need some more work, Jerry. How about a Rosa-made picnic table at your water wheel area? Well, actually, back when I was doing the bluegrass festivals, I think I made 6 picnic tables. And they've all since expired. That was 25 years ago. People stole them, borrowed them, broke them, all kinds of things. I made them out of just
water pipe basically, and they weren't real super heavy duty, but they served the purpose for the several years that we had our bluegrass festivals. But anyway, so I know how to make those, but I don't see that in the very near future. In fact, I may restore one of the old ones that I have and set it up there or something. Dottie Hildebrand, Tom, a picnic table would be for others. Jerry don't have time to rest. Yeah, that's a fact. That is the truth right there. You said a mouthful right there. Bill Webb, good morning, Jerry and friends. It's a rainy morning here in Commerce, Texas. Well, yeah, if you guys remember a few days ago, I said that the way that you can tell if it's going to rain or not is you go out and you look and see if there's any dew. Well, there was no dew on the Ranger this morning. Typically, when I get in the Ranger, it's just completely saturated with dew. Well, there was no dew this morning. So it looks like rain. I would almost guarantee you, I'd almost bet $1,000 that it's going to rain today. Now, it may not rain very much. It may only sprinkle, but I'll guarantee you there's going to be some water falling from the sky today. When you don't have any dew at all, you can pretty much bet it's going to rain a little bit. May not be very much, but you'll get some. So that's what I'm looking for today. It looks like it is going to be pretty dark out. And because of that, I'm going to definitely today is paperwork day. I'm going to stay inside here. I'm going to finish that little short video that I started on the blade sharpening. I'm going to get this paperwork caught up and go from there. Catch up on my email, all that. Let's see. Moving on down, looking for more question marks. Bill Rhodes, good morning, everybody. And there it says, Jerry, I was wondering if you knew somebody named Floyd Asbury. He was a truck driver that lived in Hazelwood that hunted with beagles. I didn't, but my dad possibly might have, because Dad sold beagles to just about everybody in the Missouri, Illinois area. People came from long distances to buy Dad's beagles. And, but I don't know the name. But he possibly might have known him. Let's see, moving on down. David Tharp, I'm taking steps to overcome my hiking addiction, but I'm not out of the woods yet. You got some of the best dad jokes ever. The problem is I can't remember them. I'd like to say these things to my grandsons while they're here, but I can't. After we leave the vlog, I can't remember them to go tell them. That's my problem. David Tharp, and my wife was hooked on the hokey pokey, but she turned herself around. Let's see. I see a single question mark on Bruce Moore. Let's see. It says, good morning, Jerry. I have a Washburn guitar. When they drilled the peg holes, the bridge plate splintered. Should I replace it? And if so, what would I use? Well, first of all, it's a big job. That's a big job. That's really the first thing. So, if it would happen to be loose where you could get it out, then for sure, jump right into it. But if it's really tight, if you've never done it before, you got your work cut out for you. That's a tough, tough job. The splintering is not all that uncommon, unfortunately. It's pretty common, believe it or not. But if you are going to get the job done, for sure, I would recommend replacing it with either rosewood or Paduke or another good tone wood like that. Those good hard woods. Do not use a softwood. Don't use spruce. Don't use, cedar or something like that. I wouldn't use maple. I mean, maple is the common bridge plate, I would say, mostly because it's cheap and it's just plentiful. But if I was going to do it and go to all the work to take it out of there, I for sure would not put maple back in there. I would use, either Paduke or rosewood, something like that, and that'll give you a real good crisp sound. If your bridge plate is really small, in other words, if it's 1.25 inches or less, width-wise across there, I would expand it. I'd make it more like 2 inches, something like that, and go across, because it'll strengthen the whole area. And if you're using a higher grade of wood, you won't degrade your sound. It'll be better. So that is not, I've said it so many times, but that is not the place to use your cheap stuff. That's where everybody uses their cheap stuff, because you can't see it. They just think it's just there for, just for a little bit of strength or whatever. That's sound right there. That's what you're dealing with. And you want strong quality sound wood there. And, rosewood is very strong. Paduke's very strong. They both have a great sound. It's not the place to take a shortcut. So there you go. There's my soapbox speech for this morning. But you got your work cut out for you getting that out of there if you've never done it. It's not easy to get out of there. That's one of the hardest things. Now, let me also give you one more caution about that. Don't pry. If you stick something in there and you start to pry like this, you're going to break your top, because your top's going to be softer than that cross grain on that. Whatever wood's in there is going to be stronger than your top board. So if you try to pry, it's just going to bust your top board. So you only want to you want to get one of those tools like Stumag sells, and you pull, but don't start doing this, because if you do that, you're going to break something. It's not easy. It's not easy at all to get that out of there. It's one of the hardest jobs you'll do. If it's in there well, if it's loose, well, no big deal. Moving on. Daddy Hillebrand, David. Okay, we're talking to David there. Moving on. Now I'm looking for question marks that would be something that you'll directing to me here. Don't see much until we go live, it looks like. Yep. Okay, so after we went live, looks like Walt Willard was the first one there. Dottie says, nice job on the Polaris, Jerry. Well, I can't even tell you how relieving that is. I'm seriously telling you, you just don't know how big of a thing that is off my shoulders. It's been driving me nuts for years, actually, several years, and just couldn't find anything to make it work right. I didn't know there was a sensor back there. You can't see it, and so I had no idea there was something back there that needs to be looked at, David Tharp, no, he's talking to Dottie there. Charles Rostern, hey Jerry, I'm gluing up my boards for my first ever mandolin build today. I glued up the first ones using Tight Bond Original, as it's the only glue I have, but should I get Tight Bond 3 instead? I only use Tight Bond Original on instruments. I'm trying to think, did I ever use Tight Bond 3 on an instrument? Maybe once or twice. Like if I absolutely for sure 100% knew it would never be something I would want to take apart. Like say if you were putting the veneer on top of your peg head, you could use Tight Bond 3 there. It wouldn't matter because you're not going to ever take that veneer off, something like that. It's fine. Don't use Tight Bond 3. Do not use Tight Bond 3 in your neck joint. Because if you ever have to take that apart, you will definitely regret that. Because Tight Bond 3, when they say it's waterproof, it's waterproof. Like, for instance, and I'll just give you another side example, and this just happened yesterday, as a matter of fact. I had forgotten to clean my paintbrush with the Tight Bond 3, and, it froze solid on there, of course. It glued the paintbrush solid. Nah, it's just a cheap paintbrush, throw it away, no big deal. But typically, when I did that with regular Type Bond, I just put it in some warm water, wait 5 minutes, go in there and just pull the glue off of it, and the paintbrush is perfectly clean. I let that paintbrush set in the warm water. Well, it was hot water when I first put it in there, and then I let it set overnight, and it's still brick hard the next day. It didn't soften it at all. So Type Bond 3 is waterproof. That's why I used that on the water flume out there too. When I was building that flume, I used Type Bond 3 on that. So if you're going to do outdoor projects or anything that could be exposed to water, use Type Bond 3. But for the most part on instruments, Type Bond, regular Type Bond, is all you'll ever need. You don't need to use Type Bond 3 at all. Type Bond, regular Type Bond, is just an incredibly good glue for instruments, in my opinion. Moving on down, and it just scrolled on me. Okay, Paul Lanier. Jerry, wasn't the chocolate rebuild a rewarding effort for you? Yeah, it was. I'm talking mechanically speaking, there's nothing better than the Polaris Ranger. Nothing. I haven't got a single thing I've ever fixed that I'm more tickled about than the Polaris Ranger. I very much love watching the rebuild, and the story was a perfect ending too. Yeah, that one fell together really well. And the only thing I wished I would have got on video that wasn't on video on the chocolate thing was Sue's expression on her face when she opened it first. She opened it before I did. I knew it was coming, but when she opened the box and looked in there, she goes, "Oh my gosh, why did you accept this? You can't fix this." I wished I would have had that on camera, because you just like, there's no way you can fix it. She said, "There's no way you can fix this." If I'd have had that on camera, that would have made that a perfect video. But yeah, I'm proud of chocolate, but quite honestly, chocolate was no worse than a lot of things I fixed. Like, for instance, that Gibson that I told you about that I had to send back out to be re-chrome or gold plated. That thing was a mess. It was probably as much work as chocolate in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of instruments that, in my opinion, were probably harder than chocolate. For me, chocolate, while it seems like it was just the worst thing ever, it really wasn't that big a deal, honestly, because it was just putting pieces back together. Building an instrument from scratch is really harder than fixing chocolate, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of it, especially building like a mandolin, because you're carving everything by hand, and it's really harder than chocolate. I don't mean to diminish chocolate, because it was a great video, great series and all that. And I think everybody, in fact, I tell people all the time, like if it's somebody I've just met for the first time, I always recommend them to watch the chocolate video series, because I think it's a good one. It has a huge impact. But from my perspective looking out, chocolate was just almost average, really. I know it might sound like it's, I'm trying to, I don't know, make it sound like I don't know what it makes it sound like, but the point is that it was not that darn difficult compared to a lot of the other things that we do. Just being truthful, it just wasn't that very tough. You can really fix anything on an instrument. It doesn't really matter. And again, the analogy, and I don't have a better analogy, is if you can build one from scratch, then what part of anything that's broken could you not fix? That's my analogy. I mean, like, if you can build one from scratch, then no matter how bad one is broken, you ought to be able to fix it. Now, sometimes that means almost replacing everything, but you still could fix it. So there you go. Simon Jardine, morning, Jerry. Do you have any opinion of Scag machinery, SCAG machinery? Jerry, they used to by UK local authorities for public parks, football fields, etc. Very reliable, but very expensive. I kind of think I know what you're talking about, but I don't have a full picture in my head. So, no, I can't really comment on it, but I kind of think I know what you're talking about. But I can't really comment on that. Preston Johnson, thank you your grandson for that great Google tip. Yeah, it's going to change my life down there, seriously, because I'm constantly doing that. It's just that I was doing it the hard way. It's so fast. And when I'm telling you 3 seconds, I am not exaggerating. I barely got my hands back from the phone, and he goes, here it is right here. I'm thinking, what? You couldn't have done it that quick, and he did. He did it that quick. Now, of course, part of that was the fast internet, too, because, our internet's almost instant now compared to the way it used to be. It's amazing. It was just amazing. It floored me bigger than you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was so happy. Preston Johnson, thank your... okay, that was the one I just read. Sorry. Rubbish Guitar Bloke. Congrats on defeating your Ranger nemesis. Yes. Man, you don't know how good that makes me feel. I'm serious. Let's see. Dottie, I bought a new phone, and for 2 days I tried to work it. So after 2 days, I gave it to my grandson. He had it for about 10 minutes and had the phone up and running. Made me look like an idiot. Yeah, those kids these days, they definitely know all that stuff. There's no question about it. And that's, so many people have trouble with their downloads and things. They don't fully understand how to download this or that or a song or whatever. And when I suggest this to people, they probably think I'm being a smart aleck, but I'm not. I'm saying, do you have any, like 14-year-old kids running around? I said, if you have any like young neighbor kids or anything, they'll show you how to do it because they know how to do all that stuff. And I don't mean it to be a smart aleck. Because that's just the way life is now. They know, all those kids know all that stuff. It's just nuts. So if you ever have trouble with a computer or a smartphone, just ask some kid because they know how to do it. But that one did still caught me off guard yesterday. That one definitely caught me off guard. It wouldn't have caught me off guard if it had taken him 15 seconds or 20 seconds. But it took 3 seconds. Ben Boyd, I just tried the Google image search using your image. Instantly came up for high glue and two-way truss rods. Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Ben. Charles Salkowitz, good day to all from lovely Pontiac, Michigan. Let's see. Bill Rhodes has some question marks. I'm pretty sure that I hunted with your dad's dogs. Floyd told me that he bought them from a big breeder in St. Louis. Very likely, very, very likely, because Dad had a lot of them, and, there were times he'd have 20, 30 beagles, he always had some. He'd have a half a dozen to 20 or 30. It just depended on the season and, where he was at on selling them and stuff, because they would drive a long way to get his beagles because they were always well trained and, that kind of thing. He even had some of them that were trained to retrieve the rabbits. You could shoot them with your shotgun, and the beagles aren't known for retrieving, but some of his beagles would do that. They'd run over and grab the rabbit and bring it to you, and like a duck dog would do, swim out and get the duck and bring it back to you. But anyway, and he also, he specialized, or he got into breeding miniature beagles that could actually go down in the hole, and run a rabbit out of a hole, that kind of thing. And he didn't have a lot of those, but he had those too occasionally. Let's see, moving on down. Outboard Tinkerer, hi Jerry. My neighbor called and told my wife there's an ugly witch on your roof. My wife said to me, I was just up there. I didn't see one. I ain't going there on that one. I'm leaving that one alone. Charles Roster, thank you for the tight bond advice. I was rewatching the Finest Mandolin videos and saw you used 3 to glue the joints on the top and backboards, so I thought I should ask before. Okay. Yeah, on those seams, you can use 3 on those seams because you don't want them to ever break or come loose. But Tight Bond Original is plenty good. And I would say 95% of all the instruments I ever built, I probably could go to 99% of all the instruments I ever built. I never used Tight Bond 3 at all. I mean, it was on a rare occasion when I used Tight Bond 3. Probably because it was there, it was handy, and I used it, And I knew it was a joint that I would never want to come apart. So there you go. But Tight Bond Original is plenty good for everything. Bill Webb, on my first visit to Valley Springs Ranch, Jerry's rental retreat, he was working on chocolate, so I got to see it in pieces like a jigsaw puzzle with no picture to go by. That would have been the one thing if I could have just got that little short video clip of Sue surprise when she saw it first. I was over at my workbench and she was in the middle of the shop and she opened it up and I just turned and saw her expression and stuff. And I knew what she was looking at because I knew it was coming in, and I had seen a photograph of it that they had emailed to me. Do you think you could fix this? And I said, yeah, sure. Go send it to me. When she saw that, she went, oh, why did you take this? There's no way you can fix this. I said, it's not going to be that hard. I can fix it. Anyway, it on those kinds of things, again, it just, you do more fitting and checking than you do gluing. And then the other thing that's difficult on those kinds of fixes like chocolate is the clamping, because you got to think, you always dry fit stuff and practice your clamping before you glue it up. And know that when you put the glue on it, now it's going to be slick and it's going to be sliding around and it's going to be much harder to clamp. So think about that on those kinds of repairs. Just dry fit it first, test your clamping, and then know that your clamping is not going to work as good once you get the glue on it. So, have that in mind before you start. Let's see. Dottie Hildebrandt. There's no question marks. Let's see. Larry Fisher. Jerry, are you familiar with the Thaxton Speakeasy in St. Louis? A little gal has done 2 YouTube videos. They're singing and playing clarinet. Place looks very ornate. No, I don't know that. But when you say a gal playing and singing the clarinet, well, first of all, there's a couple of gals on YouTube that are real popular that do that. I can't think of their names right now, but I've watched a lot of her videos. But it reminds me of a jam session I went to, so I'm just wondering if it could be this same girl. I went to and I think I've told this once or twice before. I went to a jam session out in Pacific, Missouri, and it was on some little lake. It was kind of like a subdivision that the main thing about the subdivision was this lake. It was a fairly good sized lake, but not big by, boating standards or anything. It was smaller than one you would take big boats on. But anyway, we were on the outdoor deck, overlooking the lake, and we were just about to get this jam started. Everybody just got there. There was probably 10 or 12 musicians, And this girl, and she was pretty young at the time. I'm going to say, I don't know, late teenager, I guess. I don't know. She sat down next to me, and I thought I was being a smart aleck, teasing her, and I say to her, I said, here, do you want to use my tuner? I'm thinking, there's nothing to tune on a clarinet. That's what I'm thinking. She goes, yeah, if you don't mind. You're going to knock me over the feather because I'm expecting her to say, oh, yeah, right, sure. She didn't. She says, yeah, if you don't mind. And so I handed it to her thinking, what the heck she's going to do with this? And so she puts it on her bell and she adjusts her bell and, and she hands it back to me. She says, thank you. And I said, okay, well, you're welcome. So that was the first thing that surprised me. But the biggest thing that surprised me was this girl on her clarinet could play any fiddle tune note for note that you could think of. I mean, if you've ever heard of a fiddle tune, this girl could play it. It was amazing. I was floored all day at that jam. That was one of the coolest jams I've ever been to. I've never heard anybody take like a woodwind instrument, and play fiddle tunes. And she could play every fiddle tune note for note. I've never seen anything like it. And it was the coolest thing. And I asked her, I said, where did you learn to play all these fiddle tunes? She goes, well, my grandpa, he played fiddle and he raised me and, I just learned to play clarinet to his fiddle, and it was amazing. So I don't know. It would be cool if it was that same girl. I doubt it, but it was really cool. I don't even know her name. I have no idea. It was a long time ago. But she schooled me on tuning her clarinet for sure. Moving on down. But no, to answer your question, I don't know of the Thaxton Speakeasy. I've never been there. Clyde Lewis, good morning, Jerry. Was the firecracker guitar about the worst case scenario? Yeah, that one was probably, when you bring that up now that you say that, trying to remember, would that be the hardest thing I ever did? Yeah, it probably was. That really was the hardest. It was way harder than chocolate, way harder, because of all the crud the guy did to it. Had he just brought it to me broken, it'd been just like chocolate. Wouldn't have been no big deal. But that wasn't what happened with that one. You got to remember, that guy took a gallon jug. I'm not talking about the little small bottle. He took a gallon jug of probably Elmer's wood glue, which is good wood glue, by the way, and I don't even knock it. It's perfectly fine to use it for instruments also. But anyway, it was some kind of wood glue, poured the whole gallon jug inside the guitar, and then did this, and coated the whole inside of the guitar with that glue. And then it dried about a 1/4 inch thick through the whole guitar. Now, you want to talk about something that was hard. That was hard. That was hard. And I've told this story so many times, I hate to even tell it again, but he also put a piece of baby bed rail about, just, you could tell it was baby bed rail. It had the holes in it and everything where the rails went, where those little, what do you call them? I don't know what they're called now, but ballisters or something. Anyway, he had that glued up inside there. What he thought that would help, I have no idea. And he also put a triangle piece of paneling that was, I don't know, just as big as you could get a piece of triangle paneling through the sound hole. It was that big. It just barely went through the sound hole. And he had that glued up in there. Again, why he thought that would help, I have no idea. Why would anybody pour a gallon jug of glue in their guitar and do this? I have no idea. And that was the one that I called him. See, I took that into total darkness out in Dodge City, Kansas, and didn't have any. And I told you, I'm night blind. I cannot see. And it was completely dark out there. Couldn't see the guitar for nothing. And I said, look, I can't see it. We'll just put it in the car. And when I get to St. Louis, I'll call you, let you know what it's going to take. So it was 3 days went by, and I finally opened the case and looked in there, and I went, oh, my gosh, I called the guy and I said, mister, if this was a case of child abuse, I'm telling you right now, this is the worst case of child abuse in the history of the whole free world. There's nothing worse than this. I've never seen anything like it. I said, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm just going to take it over and throw it in the dumpster and get rid of it for you, because there's no reason to think anybody could fix this. He starts crying on the phone. I'm not kidding you. You could tell he was sobbing. And he says, please don't throw it away. You know? He says, it was my dad's guitar, you know, and he's going on and on. Well, then, you know, I'm a sentimental kind of guy. So now he's telling me it's his sentimental thing. It's his father's guitar and all this, you know. I said, all right. And then I made him tell me how it got into shape. As I said, look, I can't even believe I'm telling you I'm going to fix this. I can fix it. Yes, I can fix it. But I said, first of all, you're going to have to pay for it, because this is going to cost some money. And, you know, and I really didn't charge him very much at all, to be honest with you. I think I charged him like $800 or something. But anyway, this was a long time ago, you know, and $800 was a lot more money back then than it would be now. It doesn't sound like much now. But anyway, I said, but I'm not even going to try to fix it until you tell me what happened to this guitar. And then that's where he told the story about, you know, you know how cold it gets here in Kansas. And, you know, he says it was, you know, he's still crying on the phone. And he says, it gets like 15 below here, you know. And he says, it was like that one night. And I remembered I left my guitar out in the trunk. And he said, you know, I was in bed sleeping. He says, I didn't even put on shoes. I just ran out the door and opened the trunk and ran back in the house with the guitar as fast as I could. I says, I opened the case and I set the guitar right next to the wood stove. I jumped back in bed and pulled the covers over my head. And he says, about 5 minutes later, I heard it go, kapow! And he says, it just cracked the back, you know. And I said, okay, back up the truck. I said, hold on right there. I said, you're not talking to somebody that's gullible. I said, I know what causes problems. And I know that would cause a problem. Yes, you're 100% right. But that isn't what caused all these breaks and cracks across the front of this guitar. There's no way that's caused this, because these breaks and cracks are going across the grain, some of them. I said, there's no way that would make it break across the grain. That will split it, yeah, down the grain for sure, but it won't break it across the grain. So you're going to have to come up with a better story. And there was total silence. And then he goes, well, I didn't want to tell you that part. I said, well, you're going to have to tell me or I'm not going to fix it. And that's when he told me they all got drunk, you know, and they were talking about setting guitars in front of speakers. And then I interrupted him when he told me that part. I said, well, now, yeah, I know about setting guitars in front of speakers, but I'm going to tell you right now, that didn't cause this either. He goes, no, that's not what happened. He says, we were talking about that, and I was getting kind of fed up with him at this point, see. So anyway, he says, that's not what happened. He says, we were all drunked up, you know, and it was 4th of July. And somebody says, well, if a speaker will make that thing vibrate, put a firecracker in there. That'll cause it to vibrate. He said, and I said, oh, you got to be kidding me. You didn't put a firecracker in there, did you? He goes, no, I didn't. I put a whole pack in there. What a moron. You got to be a moron to do something like that. So anyway, I've already told you all that mess. But then 10 years later, my phone rings. Now, by this time, I've moved down here to this farm. And this lady says, are you Jerry Rosa? And I said, yes. And she goes, well, you don't know me. You probably won't remember. But she says, my husband, whatever his name was, gave you a guitar, you know, and she said, you told him if it was child abuse, it was the worst case of child abuse in the history of the world. And I said, lady, I know exactly who you are. And anyway, she says, well, my husband died, you know, a month ago or whatever. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And she said, I've got a guy here that says he wants to buy the guitar. And I was just wondering if you think this is a good deal or not. And I said, well, how much is he offering? And she says, $3,800. And I said, sell it. I didn't even hesitate. I said, sell it. Yes, that's a good price. So I guess I fixed it pretty good. Yeah, it was a mess. That was the biggest mess ever. It really was. That by far blew, chocolate away. That was 10 times harder than chocolate. But chocolate was again, I don't mean to downplay it. It was obviously a big deal, but it wasn't the hardest thing I ever did, trust me, by any stretch. All right, so I beat that to death again. I know some of you have heard that story about 4 times now. Let's see. I think we got a whole bunch of question marks popping up here. I've lost my place, sorry. Okay, I'm looking for it. I'm almost there, I think. Yeah. So that was Clyde Lewis that said that. Okay, David Tharp says, a farmer walked into the kitchen where his wife was with a duck under his arm. He said, here's the pig I told you about. She said, that's a duck, stupid. He said, I was talking to the duck. Oh, man, you guys are asking for trouble here. I'm not even going to get involved in those discussions. Let's see. Moving on down, we've got the Outboard Tinkerer. Jerry, what did you think of Kenny Baker, the great fiddler? Oh, just as good as anybody I've ever heard. I love Kenny Baker's fiddling. Just absolutely incredible. One of the best fiddlers ever. There's a lot of really, really good fiddlers. I mean, Mark O'Connor, pretty hard to beat Mark O'Connor on anything, but Kenny Baker was killer. I really like Kenny Baker's fiddle style. Bill Webb, I got a guitar from one of our sister stores, and someone did a fairly decent neck repair. They put so much super glue around the nut that they glued the low E string into the slot. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. People do. That's why I've said time and time and time again, I don't repair nuts. I either replace them, I don't do the super glue and baking soda tricks and all that. Have I ever done it? Yeah, I've done it once or twice, like maybe on a super cheap guitar that just doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But on any kind of a decent guitar, like a Martin or, Taylor or any decent guitar, there's no way I would do that. It's just not the way to fix it. Because it doesn't, it sort of holds up for a little while, but it doesn't hold up well. It's just not the good way to fix it. If you're doing it by yourself and you're the only one, and if it's for your own purpose, well, that's fine. But if you're doing it for a customer, to me, it's just not the way to fix it. Bill Webb, also, any idea why my spray lacquer turned milky? Yep, I know exactly why. Especially the fourth coat. Yes, I know exactly why. That's moisture in the air. And that's why you need to use that retarder. We'll see now. If you're probably talking about spray can lacquer, I'm assuming. I don't know which one you're talking about. But if you're talking about the kind that you mix and spray it, then you need to put retarder in there for sure. Retarder, and the only retarder there is that's worth a darn is that one I've showed several times. It's Mohawk retarder. Boy, I probably ought to put that on the products I use page. I don't think I've put that out there. Yeah, I'll try to do that today. I'll try to remember. I better write it down because I won't remember. I got too many things to do to remember anything anymore. All right. Retarder. There's only one that works as far as I'm concerned. I have tried. In fact, I can show you probably 2 or 3 different kinds that I've got on the shelf besides the one that I like. And none of the other ones work. The ones, I'm sorry, Stu Mac, but the one that they sell doesn't work. In my opinion, the one that I've bought from other places, they don't work. There's only one retarder that works, at least that gets my seal of approval. And that's the Mohawk retarder. And I don't remember the numbers on it or anything, but it's a special retarder, and that one works. And you can go out there in a rainstorm and spray it, and it'll fight off the moisture. But that milky color comes from moisture for sure. And I'll try to add that today. I really will. I'll try to make that. In fact, I'll try to do that first as soon as we're done with the vlog. Otherwise, I'll forget it. Kelly Manis, Google search is how I found out that your wheel was from a cream spreader. It didn't take 3 seconds, though. I had to search a bit more, and it was Google search that got me down the road. Well, thank you, Kelly. I sure do appreciate that, too, because that was a mystery. Like, I was going, I kind of had in my head that it had to be some kind of a hand crank thing because of the way those teeth were made, because it would not hold up. I know it wouldn't hold up to a machine. There's no way it could. I mean, I'm pretty machine literate, and stuff, and know how things work. And it wouldn't hold up unless it was a hand crank. So I had already made up my mind it was some kind of hand crank something. But I was thinking, the only thing I could think of that made any sense was like a sewing machine, and even that didn't really make any sense. So the cream separator was really a good thought there, and it definitely is what that was. Now that you say that about the Google search, that reminded me of another point. When Trinian found that, well, he found one that was, it looked exactly the same. It looked identical. But when you read the fine print numbers, the numbers were slightly different. So I did the same thing he did, but I took just a few seconds more and let the image focus a little bit better on the thing I had. And so sure enough, I did exactly what he did, and it only took a couple seconds. But I gave it a little better image, and it brought up the exact match. Well, the one he matched was like $59, and I thought, well, golly, for $59, I don't think I'm going to replace that stupid little sensor. I think I'll at least try this first, and if I have to replace it, I will. But for $59, I would expect. This little sensor thing is almost like nothing. It's just a little bitty darn thing. It's like nothing. So I thought, I'm not going to spend $59 on it until I know if this cleaning works or not. Well, the cleaning did work. But anyway, when I took it and searched and found the exact numbers, it was $103. So I thought, $103 for this little stupid thing? It's ridiculous, the prices of things these days. You have to see how little the sensor is. Obviously, the sensor is important, so don't get me wrong. And definitely, yes, I would spend $103 to fix my problem. Don't get me wrong. But I wasn't going to spend it if the fix works, and the fix worked. But anyway, moving on down. Kim Williford says, you have the best stories to tell. I just love them so much. Well, thanks, Kim. The thing is that I'm not making any of it up. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. It's if those people were here or watching this video, I guarantee you they would say, yeah, he told it exactly like it happened, because that's exactly how it happened. It's the kind of stories you can't make up. It's like nobody would believe you if you told those stories, if they weren't true. Let's see. And Clyde says, thanks for retelling the firecracker story. That's incredible. Yeah, who would do that? Who would do that in their right mind, thinking that that's going to help anything? I've seen lots of other stuff. I'm not lying to you when I tell you I've pulled everything out of a guitar that you can even imagine. There's people use toothpicks, glued those up inside there. I found 6-inch rulers glued up inside there. Caleb was here, I think, when I found the ruler. I'm not really sure, but Caleb saw some of the stuff, you know. And there's just, you can't imagine what people do. They just do some of the dumbest things thinking that it's going to fix it. How is that going to improve anything? That's the first, before you do something, ask yourself that one question. Is this going to improve anything? If it's not going to improve anything, then just don't do it, you know. Just doesn't make sense to me. Man, I should sing that Common Sense song right now, shouldn't I? Let's see. Bill Webb, outboard. Yes, it was humid, rainy when I put the last coat on. Yeah, for sure. I guarantee you, when you see lacquer turn milky, it's always moisture, always. And I'll tell you what you can do. And even, I said that the Mohawk is bomb-proof or foolproof, and it pretty much is for the most part, but then I give you the caveat that if it is raining and it is really humid, it's definitely the one to use for sure, but then instantly bring it inside or bring it to an air-conditioned location where the air is much drier. That is definitely a necessary thing to do also. You don't want to leave it hanging out in an open garage out in the moisture. Do not do that. I always brought them inside and either put them like in the bathroom to hang up where it was air-conditioned bathroom and it was closed so I didn't have to smell it, you know. You just enclose it in the bathroom. But always bring it inside and dry it in and hang it in a place that's air-conditioned is by far the best option. And when I say air conditioned, I mean like literally air conditioned, where you got the AC on running. Kim Williford, is it possible to replace a fuel injector system to a carburetor? Well, Kim, that's a good question. And the answer is I don't know. If I knew, I'd tell you, but I don't know. You asked the question, and believe it or not, that actually crossed my mind the other day. I thought, I wonder if I could just get rid of this crap and put a carburetor on this thing. And the answer is I don't know. It would seem almost like you could do it, but it would probably be so complicated that it probably wouldn't be worth it. Bill Webb, yes, spray can lacquer. Yeah. Okay, well, spray can lacquer, then the only thing I can suggest for that is that you bring it indoors instantly. But and I wouldn't even consider spraying it on a damp day. I would only consider spraying it on a dry day and then bring it indoors instantly into the air conditioning. Should I sand it off and start over? Well, I'll tell you, there's one option you can try, and I don't think it'll work it's worked for me in the past, but only a little bit. And that is that you could take a heat gun and lightly go over the area with a heat gun and, heat it up to the point where you're almost, this is the tricky part, and it's a bleeding edge, where you're almost ready to blister the paint. If you can heat it up pretty hot, but, and the way to do it is pass it over there and put your hand on it, feel it, pass it over there, put your hand on it, feel it. Don't let it get too hot, but get it pretty darn hot. And it might dry it up and might clear it up. And I have had it clear up doing that, but it's not guaranteeing that method. But yeah, you'll probably have to sand it off to start over if the heat method doesn't work. In fact, there's another thing about the heat method is after you spray it, and a lot of times you can get a hint that you'll start to see a very, very light, milky look to it, right at the very early stage, it'll start. And if you can take a heat gun and get back a ways from it and just blow warm air on it, that while it's still wet, it'll often get rid of that moisture. But you do that from a distance further back, and you're just blowing warm air on it, and that'll fix that too. I didn't think about all these tips, but these are good tips. So you should try these things if you're doing this kind of thing. Moving on down, looking for question marks. Well, maybe we're done. I'm not sure. Gary Hayes says, I've watched your vlogs for years. Thank you for all the tips on the guitars. I have learned a lot. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad it helps. Paul Lanier. Well, there's no question marks there, I don't think. Moving on down, Bill Webb. Resist the urge to glue random pieces of wood inside your guitar. Yeah, that was one of my lines in one of my videos. I said, yes. I think I did that as a public service announcement. I said, let me give you a public service announcement. Just resist the urge to glue random pieces of wood up inside your guitar. Just resist the urge. Fight it off with your whole being. And it's so many people just do stuff like that. I don't know why they do, but they do. But the baby bed rail and the giant piece of paneling, that one there tops the cake. Nobody did any worse than that, I don't think. Let's see. Moving on down. Last one. Bill Webb. I was in the warehouse for the last coat and brought it right inside the store. Yeah. Well, anyway, the moisture thing is a tough thing. And I always mixed my own lacquer. Well, I say always. On touch-ups and things, I would use the spray can lacquer. Or like if I was just doing a truss rod cover or something like that, I would use the spray can lacquer. Small things, I would use the spray can lacquer. But for big things, I always mixed my lacquer, and I always put the Mohawk retarder in there. I'm telling you, you're wasting your money on all of the other retarders. They don't work. They just don't work. Not anywhere near like the Mohawk retarder does. Not even close. Not even similar kind of effect. So I'll put that on the products I use page today for those of you who are interested. I have to look at it again this morning and see what it looks like. I'll try the heat as a last resort. Yeah, well, I mean, you got nothing to lose. If it's milky, you're going to have to sand it off anyway, so you might as well try the heat. The heat definitely works when it's still wet. But again, you don't want to get real close with the heat then because you'll catch it on fire. It makes sense? Because that stuff's very flammable. So you want to stay back away from it and blow heat on it, and that'll just dry it quicker, and it'll dry that moisture out of it. So, but that's when the heat will definitely work, is when it's still wet. Wavy Gravy. One surefire way to eliminate all buzzing is to fill both of your ears with hide glue. That might help with these cicadas, because I can hear the cicadas right now. It drives you nuts after a while. Just drives you nuts. Guys, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for being here. I hope these tips today have helped you. And we've gone a little extra long today, but maybe it was worth it, I hope. Thank you. We will see you we'll see you on Monday probably. And I'll get this blade sharpening video out today, and I'll get that other thing put on the products I use page also. We'll see you when we see you. Thanks.